Hi, this video is intended as a basic travel guide for folks interested in far West Texas. I'll be sharing photos, videos, and information that emphasize wild, scenic spaces, interesting towns and communities, the paths that take you from one to the other, and some experiences I've had about good places to stay and to eat. West Texas is a big, open landscape with wide vistas, mountains, long empty roadways, and memorable communities. It sits at the northeastern edge of the Chihuahua Desert. Summers are hot and dry, while winters can be cool to cold because of a relatively high elevation. Winters can also be wet at times when monsoon rains blow in from the southwest. The beauties and pleasures of West Texas alternate between the large and the small scale, each of them awe-inspiring in their own way. We'll start off by exploring the towns strung along scenic U.S. Highway 90, which runs east to west between Big Bend to the south and Interstate 10 to the north. These towns, including Marathon, Alpine, and Marfa, are each distinctive in character and appeal. Starting in the east, Marathon is the smallest town of this cluster, with a 2020 population of 427. For visitors, the town is dominated by the upscale Gage Hotel and its associated restaurant, coffee shop, gift store, and gallery. The Gage gives Marathon the feel of a spa town. If you linger in Marathon, check out Brick Vault Brewery and Barbecue, and stop into the town's main establishment for groceries and basics, the French Grocer, which also has solid breakfast tacos, great sandwiches to carry out, and an outdoor patio with occasional live music and cold beer. And if you want to avoid the powerful gravity of the Gage, check out the fun and more affordable Marathon Motel and RV Park a few hundred yards west of the center of town. Driving west from Marathon, enjoy the empty spaces and mountain ridges. This is the edge of West Texas high country. And while it's easy to drive fast, the landscape rewards a slower pace. Watch out also for a regular speed trap located several miles to the east of Alpine. Located about 30 miles west of Marathon, and with just shy of 6,000 residents, Alpine is the largest town in the region, featuring the only hospital in the area and the campus of Sul Ross State University. It has a wide range of services, hardware stores, groceries, restaurants, and more lodging capacity than the rest of the region combined. This is also the single community in the region where you can generally rely on shops and services to be open most days and with regular hours. While there are lots of hotels, including larger chains, I recommend the Maverick Inn on the east side of town and the Antelope Lodge on the west side. Both are tastefully restored historic motels with a strong sense of West Texas identity. If you want to go a bit more upscale, try out the Holland Hotel, just across from the Amtrak station in the center of town. Food options are plentiful, with the Riata as a classic standby for tasty chicken fried steak, chili rellenos, and more. Heading west out of Alpine, US 90 winds its way through the juncture of the Davis and Glass Mountains. Enjoy the prominent peaks and interesting rock formations that extend for miles along the route. Here, as with the entire stretch from Marathon to Marfa and beyond, the highway parallels a busy railroad route that connects Southern California to the big cities of eastern Texas and beyond. The regular trains serve as a daily heartbeat in each of these towns, which were originally spaced as water stops back when the trains were steam-powered. About 12 miles out of Alpine, you'll pass another regular speed trap and then leave the mountains behind and enter the Marfa Plateau, home to some of the most robust native grassland in West Texas. Another 6 miles along, you'll pass the Marfa Lights Visitor Center, where most nights you can easily witness the mysterious lights that have been documented at this location for more than a century. 7 miles further, you'll enter the town of Marfa. Marfa is an isolated ranching town with a dynamic Hispanic majority population of about 1,800 folks. Over the past 50 years, the town has slowly evolved into a world-renowned center for the arts, kicked off by modernist sculptor Donald Judd when he moved here to escape the confines of New York City in the 1970s. Over time, he bought up a number of Marfa's buildings, as well as an historic military fort on the south side of town. Today, those buildings house a wealth of modern art and design. It's a truly unique community. In keeping with Judd's aesthetic, the artistic presence in town is both minimalist and powerful, from the simple white building facades to the open-air sculptures scattered around the edges of the town. Ask around to learn where and how to tour the many galleries in installments. Judd's philosophy was to create art and design that is intimately connected to landscape, and there is no substitute for seeing these works in the environment they were made for. You can also check out one of the nation's newest national historic monuments. The Blackwell School, operating in Marfa for more than 75 years, served as a segregated school for the Hispanic residents of the region up until 1965. I love spending time in Marfa. Despite a reputation for attracting pop stars and hipsters, it's fundamentally a quiet, small town that has not lost the transformative aura that encourages you to leave the phone in your room, wander around, linger, and open yourself up to the town's slow, sunny pace. Marfa is at its most relaxed Monday through Thursday. Many of the galleries, shops, and restaurants are closed, and visitor traffic is at an ebb. Weekends, and particularly those when there's a festival or event in town, will feel more energetic, but rarely to the point where the essential peacefulness of the town is lost. You've got a wide range of lodging options, from the upscale Hotel St. George and the historic Paisano to the hip Thunderbird and funky El Cosmico. Less expensive options include a $25 space for your tent at El Cosmico and the no-frills Riata Inn on the east side of town. You'll find your best and most expensive meal in West Texas at Cochineal, solid barbecue at Convenience West, a boisterous social atmosphere at Margaret's, yummy counter-serve pizza at Para Llevar, and great coffee and a relaxed patio at the Sentinel. Monday through Thursday, you can generally rely on Jet's Grill in the Hotel Paisano and the Water Stop on the west side of town to be open for dinner. From Marfa, we'll take a quick detour north, where a 20-mile drive on Texas Highway 17 takes us to Fort Davis, a quaint town of about 1,200 residents in the locale of Fort Davis National Historic Site, home of the all-black Buffalo Soldier regiments in the years following the Civil War. From Fort Davis, consider taking the 75-mile loop of Texas Highways 118 and 166 through the Davis Mountain Range. It's a fun, twisty, up-and-down, well-paved route, and the story goes that while filming the classic movie Giant outside of Marfa, James Dean would race his car around this loop each evening after filming, until the producers finally took the Porsche away from him. The loop route will take you up to over 6,000 feet elevation as you wind in and around the mountains. It also features Davis Mountain State Park for hiking and camping, and the world-famous McDonald Observatory, which hosts tours and star parties. You can also head north out of Fort Davis on Highway 17, up through another beautiful stretch of the Davis Mountains, before you eventually leave them behind and enter the town of Balmorhea, famous for its waterways fed from the natural springs at Balmorhea State Park, a popular swimming destination throughout the region. Now we'll zip back down to Highway 90, and we'll take it west out of Marfa for about 35 miles to the tiny town of Valentine, and a bit beyond to what is probably the region's best-known art installation, Prada Marfa. Then we'll continue west for another 40 miles to Van Horn at the intersection with Interstate 10. Van Horn is a dusty town without much tourist infrastructure, but it does have fun and whimsical street art, and the Hotel El Capitan, which shares a lineage with the Gage and Marathon, the Holland Hotel in Alpine, and Hotel Paisano in Marfa. Each was designed by architect Henry Trost in the late 1920s. At El Capitan, you'll enjoy the lush courtyard, a comfortable bed, architectural details, and the best meal to be had in Van Horn. From Van Horn, we'll head north along and between mountain ranges on State Highway 54. About 25 miles along the way, peer off to the east along the long, flat valley floor, and in the distance you'll see a cluster of odd buildings, distinctive in a landscape where low-slung cattle ranch compounds are the norm. This is Launch Site 1 for Blue Origin, the space travel venture controlled by billionaire Jeff Bezos, who gradually bought up more than 400,000 acres of the land surrounding both sides of the road you're on. Continuing north, you'll see a growing prominence ahead. This is Guadalupe Mountains National Park, among the least visited parks in the system, and featuring Guadalupe Peak, the highest point of elevation in Texas, topping out at 8,751 feet. It's a remote park with the nearest services 35 miles north at White City, New Mexico, or 60 miles south to Van Horn. Come prepared. If you want to hike to the high point, you're looking at an 8.5-mile round trip and an elevation gain of over 3,000 feet. Okay, now we're backtracking to the Big Bend region, a 2+ hour drive from Guadalupe to Marfa and beyond. From each of the 3 towns we explored earlier, Marathon, Alpine, and Marfa, there are paved roads heading south that will get you to Big Bend National Park. There are also some rugged and remote side routes leading to some special places, which we'll explore as well. Let's start with U.S. Highway 385, which heads south from just outside Marathon. If you're in a rush to get to the national park, this route will get you to the north entrance in just 40 miles. As we head south, look carefully along the way and you'll notice that the uplifts here are different than other places in the region. The ridges will run east to west and are topped by a band of white rock. These are the erosion-resistant remains of mountains formed more than 400 million years ago. Compare that to the other more prominent ranges in the region, most of which were formed by volcanic activity just 40 million years ago. You'll also notice the distinctive flat-topped Santiago Peak to the west, which trails off in a 15-mile-long ridgeline to the south and east parallel to the road until you reach Persimmon Gap and the north entry to Big Bend. Before entering the park, consider the fun and remote out-and-back Black Gap Road, Texas Farm to Market Road 2627, that heads south and east just 2 miles north of the park entrance. With blind summits and fun twists and turns, this road will take you alongside the remote Black Gap State Wildlife Management Area, known particularly for its bighorn sheep population. Then it's down to the Rio Grande River and an abandoned border crossing. This crossing was originally built by Dow Chemical Company to transport fluorspar from the since-abandoned Mexican mines. Today you can see the Mexican ghost town of La Linda from the end of Black Gap Road. There's no legal access from the U.S. side, though a local organization has been working for years to reopen the bridge for international travel. If and when that happens, it'll open up some fun and interesting sites to explore. Backtracking to the Big Bend's north entrance, you've then got a 20-plus mile cruise on park roads winding through flat desert land with shifting mountain vistas to the park's headquarters building at Panther Junction. But just about 4 miles south of that north entry, we're going to get off road and to take the Marathon Road westwards across the northern reach of the park. This is not a route for RVs. Stick to a 4-wheel drive vehicle or an off-road worthy motorcycle. In wet weather, there are spots of deep and treacherous mud. In dry times, you'll encounter moderately deep sand for stretches of a quarter mile or more. The road is minimally maintained and a lot of fun if you're prepared. It winds about 16 miles to the park border, and then another 5 miles beyond before joining the paved Terlingua Ranch Road. Terlingua Ranch is a chaotic development of large lot desert shacks, RVs, and houses, as well as a remote hotel with a pool and other amenities set 16 miles off of the main road. For now, we'll take the ranch road 13 miles north and west till we intersect the north-south route of Texas Highway 118. From here, you can turn left and head 25 miles south to the west entrance of Big Bend National Park. Instead, we'll head north along some iconic roadway through long, flat straightaways that seem to stretch on endlessly, till they eventually reach distant plateaus with rocky crests and impressive stature. Then you'll wander up into the southern tail of the Davis Mountains, with the striking profile of Cathedral Mountain to the west, which serves as an iconic silhouette for the region. Finally, this route will descend a fun, twisty stretch back into Alpine. If you want to pick up some healthy food, check out Blue Water Natural Foods, just off the west side of the road on the edge of town. As I mentioned, all 3 roads headed south towards Big Bend are scenic and worth the trip. That said, the longest and best route by far starts in Marfa, heading south on U.S. Highway 67. The road starts off with a 30-mile stretch along the grasslands on the Marfa Plateau before entering the Chenati mountain range. Another 8 miles or so and consider a quick spin through the old mining town of Shafter, where a short drive on the dusty roads will lead you to the atmospheric Brooks Cemetery. Back up on the main road, you'll twist and turn a few more miles before beginning the long, wide, open descent to the border town of Presidio. Located at the junction of the Rio Conchos and Rio Grande rivers, this town of about 4,000 predates the other towns I'm covering by centuries. This was originally a Native American settlement dating back thousands of years, and their descendants remain in the region today. The Spanish first arrived in the 16th century, encountering a pueblo of the La Junta Indians. A mission, penal colony, and military installation were placed here in turn. Comanches almost wiped out the settlement in the mid-19th century, and Pancho Villa had a headquarters just over the river in Ojinaga during the Mexican Revolution in the early 20th century. Today, Presidio is a thriving workaday town and one of the most remote official border crossings in the U.S. Ojinaga, Mexico is the far larger community with more than 30,000 residents. For many residents of far west Texas, Ojinaga is also the most convenient location for a greater diversity of groceries and retail shopping. Now we'll explore 2 lesser-known routes that will get you from Marfa to Presidio. But be aware that they are much more rough and remote than the relatively sedate Highway 67. We'll start with Pinto Canyon Road, west of the main highway. This starts off as Texas Farm Road 2810, which departs the southwest corner of Marfa and travels for 33 miles through increasingly hilly terrain before petering out to gravel. Another mile or so, and you encounter the heart of the Chenati Mountains, in a squirrely, rough gravel road that quickly drops you down more than 2,500 feet of elevation in under 3 miles. Pinto Canyon Road continues for another 15 miles with fantastic scenery and a real sense of adventure. This isn't a route to rush. Take your time and enjoy. A few miles into the canyon, you'll be heading parallel to the northwest border of the soon-to-be Chenati Mountains State Park. After a decade of planning, infrastructure development for the new park will soon begin, opening up a whole new chunk of wildlands for exploration. Eventually, you'll cross over a ridge and see the long, slow decline to the Rio Grande below. If you think to call ahead and make reservations, be sure to check out Chenati Hot Springs, located a few miles off Pinto Canyon and about 6 miles out from Ruidoso. And the ghost town of Ruidoso on the Rio Grande is where this road ends. Check out the interesting historic adobe chapel under restoration before you turn southeast for the undulating 36-mile trip to Presidio along the well-paved Texas Highway 170. Okay, one more alternate route to look at. About 7 miles south of Marfa on US 67, you'll see Texas Ranch to Market 169 branching off to the south and east. This route is paved for the first 25 miles as far as Plata and the historic adobe construction of Alamito. Soon after, you'll hit gravel, and that will carry you through 35 miles of flatlands, seasonal creeks, and hills. This is very remote country, and the road has some tricky sandy stretches and a couple of steep inclines. You'll want a solid all-wheel drive vehicle to tackle this stretch. The road also provides access to the north bit of Big Bend Ranch State Park and terminates in the River Road about 7 miles southeast of Presidio. Okay, now we're going to leave Presidio and follow what is arguably the most scenic, enjoyable, and unpredictable road in all of Texas, Texas Highway 170, known as the River Road. This paved 2-lane road runs hard alongside the Rio Grande, with the stretch from Presidio running for 50 miles east and south to the quirky resort community of Lajitas on the edge of Big Bend National Park. The scenery is hugely varied. Rugged mountains, wide sandy washes, lush river flatlands, and miles of tight twists, turns, summits, and crazy topography. Take it slow and easy. Even going straight through, expect this 50 miles to take at least an hour and a half. You'll want to spin your head around to take in the many views, but meanwhile, keep your eyes on the road for the many sharp blind turns, dips, and hilltops, and the occasional javelina or roadrunner. This is a road that rewards multiple trips in both directions. You'll be surrounded by protected lands, Big Bend Ranch State Park on the U.S. side, and Cañon de Santa Elena Protected Area in Mexico. The two are part of this larger complex of protected lands, which total out at more than 5,100 square miles, or roughly the size of Connecticut, a tremendous legacy of wilderness shared across the border. This stretch of River Road ends in Lajitas, a community famous for electing a beer-drinking goat named Henry Clay as mayor. More recently, Lajitas has been the pet project of wealthy men seeking to create their own remote oasis and engaging in all sorts of shenanigans along the way. Now we'll head back up River Road to Fort Leaton, just outside of Presidio, to pick up a map, pay the $5 entry fee, and head into the interior of Big Bend Ranch State Park, a 500 square mile highlight for desert mountain lovers. From Fort Leaton, we'll head up about 8 miles of gravel roads to the official park entry. Then it's dozens of miles of fairly sedate gravel roads winding within the park. These are mostly manageable with a standard car, though there are many more miles of challenging off-road routes that are strictly limited to high-clearance 4x4 vehicles, or even better, mountain bikes or horses. Within the park, you'll find hiking paths, dozens of primitive campsites, varied rock formations, scenic vistas, and deep, dark skies for stargazing. At the center of the park, about 18 miles beyond the entry point, is the Sauceda Bob Armstrong Visitor Center, a restored ranch complex that today includes a small interpretive center and very basic bunkhouse accommodations with communal cooking facilities. Be sure to bring your own food. There's nothing for sale on site, and the bunkhouse has neither air conditioning nor heating. One last point about Big Bend Ranch State Park before we move on. The well-graded roads will tempt you to high speeds, but there is a park speed limit of 25 miles per hour, and take my word for it, it is enforced. Back down to the Rio Grande, where we'll pick up our path by heading north on Texas 170 out of Lajitas. Big Bend National Park is unfolding off to your right, and Big Bend Ranch State Park to your left. It's beautiful desert country for another dozen miles before we reach the last towns on our tour, the twin communities of Terlingua and Studi Butte. Terlingua's official limits contain something like 100 residents, but the label of Terlingua is often applied generally across a wide expanse west and north of the national park. This region was a center of mercury mining in the first half of the 20th century. You'll find lots of remnants of that history for miles around, and the way the ruins blend into the fabric of Terlingua is unlike anywhere else. In more recent decades, Terlingua has been a beautifully odd community of iconoclasts, river runners, musicians, and misfits. It also feels to me that a lot of this unique character has been bruised by the COVID pandemic, which seemed to flood the town with new folks who in turn have filed down many of the rough and interesting edges over the past few years. Terlingua has a handful of eating and drinking establishments and a lot of lodging options, from restored stone huts to teepees and more. Prices get high and availability low during the national park's busy months from October through March. For breakfast, I recommend the breakfast tacos and coffee at La Posada Milagro. If you're around in the evening, check out Starlight Theater for dinner and music, or the subterranean setting of La Kiva. During the day, head into Terlingua General Store, pull a cold beer out of the fridge, and join folks on the long wooden benches outside to listen in on whichever local musician has shown up to play, and admire one of the best views Texas has to offer. Continuing north on Texas 170, you'll rove through Studi Butte, strung haphazardly along the highway. This is where you'll find a gas station and other customary stores that are lacking in Terlingua. From here, it's a right turn in just a few miles to the western entrance of the national park. And one more note before we head into the park. The Rio Grande is the only river in the continental U.S. to host commercial whitewater trips in the winter months. The rapids are tame, but the views are amazing. Consider an easy overnight trip that will put you in the river at Lejitas, pass through miles of rolling desert scenery, and then into and through the breathtaking Santa Elena Canyon. I've had great experience with Far Flung Outdoor Center, located in Studi Butte. They also rent out comfortable casitas next door where you can reminisce about your time on the river around an outdoor fire in the evening. Okay, it's time to talk about the main attraction for many visitors to the region, Big Bend National Park. The park is defined by three distinctive landscapes: the desert, the river, and the mountains. We'll start with the Rio Grande River. The easiest ways to access the river are around Santa Elena Canyon on the west side and Rio Grande Village on the east side. Santa Elena is a dramatic slice through a sheer stone edifice rising more than 1,000 feet above. For the best view, hike about 3/4 of a mile into the canyon on a rugged trail from a parking lot near the mouth. On a hot day, the shade in the canyon and a gentle slosh through the shallow river make for a refreshing break. At the other end of the park, the Rio Grande Village is an hour-and-a-half drive along a 63-mile scenic paved route from Santa Elena. A highlight here is the informal border crossing to Boquillas, an extremely remote Mexican town that survives off of visitors from the Big Bend. Depending on water level, you can walk or catch a boat ride across the river, and then ride a mule up a half-mile slope to the small town where you can enjoy a meal and a drink and buy distinctive local handicrafts. About halfway along the road between Santa Elena and Rio Grande Village is the turnoff for the Chisos Basin and your opportunity to explore the mountains of Big Bend. This is the Chisos Mountains, an isolated, high-elevation habitat known as a sky island, which hosts unique cooler weather plant and animal species that are essentially stranded in the peaks. The Chisos Basin is where you'll find the most popular campsites in the park, as well as permanent lodging and a restaurant and visitor center. Go here for the hiking, particularly in the summer months when the baking heat at lower elevations can make any strenuous activity a health hazard. I recommend the Window and lost mine trails as day hikes. Overnight hikes will take you into the higher elevations and remote campsites, but be prepared to carry along all of the water that you'll need. And then there is the desert that makes up the bulk of the park. Best explored in the winter months, you'll find lots of hiking trails and remote rough roads requiring a serious 4x4 vehicle. And you'll discover some real hidden treasures. Much of the lower elevation park infrastructure will close down in the summer months as temperatures routinely hit triple digits. No matter what time of year, be sure to carry water, wear protective clothing, and don't get in over your head. That wraps things up. This corner of Texas is unlike any other part of the state, and even native Texans will be surprised by what they discover. Take the time to get off the beaten track and expect to be amazed. Thanks for checking out this video. Please subscribe, like, and comment. And if you're a lover of wild places, check out my Traveler's Guide for Yukon Roads and Towns. Safe travels.